The agenda for my short presentation here is like a few words about the changing nature here in the government's approach towards visa regulation and citizenship, then a few words to the new visa options, a quick overview on UAE citizenships, that there has been a path now to UAE citizenship, and last but not least, why consider the UAE. Hi from Dubai to everyone. It's another sunny day here in the Emirates. When I check, we're just slightly above 40 degrees, so it's very hot here. I always joke with my colleagues back in Switzerland, it's better to be in the Emirates all year long in the office because the temperature in the office is always the same. So it's only a bit hard when to go out, especially in a suit and tie. So what do I want to talk about today? As an introduction, just quick, a few words from the Minister of Foreign Trade here from the UAE. Just recently in the newspapers, he gave this statement where you can see that the UAE, after the COVID-19 crisis, has high aims. The intention is to double basically the economy by 2030. Of course, these are very high aims, but you can see the government here has implemented a lot of project changes in the laws. Just to pick a few, you can see full foreign ownership now for companies. I'm sure it has been out everywhere, also international news, that newly on the federal level here, the 51% Emirati shareholder has been abandoned. So now it has been given down to the 7 Emirates to decide on their level how and for which activities a foreign investor can have full ownership also outside the free zones. There have been made amendments in the bankruptcy laws, which is more in line with the international standard. You can see long-term residency and citizenship has been a topic which has been implemented just recently. This is the main topic for this presentation. And you can see the overall goal is to attract investors, entrepreneurs, and creative minds here to the country, and also in the end, taking care of the good infrastructure, the connectivity, and the ecosystem, the business ecosystem with incubators and investors here on the spot. So see, this has been just published recently by the competent minister. The UAE is aiming high. The agenda for my short presentation here is like a few words about the changing nature here in the government's approach towards visa regulation and citizenship, then a few words to the new visa options, a quick overview on UAE citizenships, that there has been a path now to UAE citizenship, and last but not least, why consider the UAE. The changing nature, what's new? It has been introduced long-term visa options now. They call it the Golden Visa, which has an eligibility now for 5 and 10 years compared to before, where it was restricted just to 2, respectively 3 years. There have been new visa options put in place now for all stages of life. For the ones who are a bit more familiar with the former visa system, as you know, either you invest in the country and open your company, or are you employed by a local company in order to get the visa. This has been now opened up to various other categories in visas, so that all other people who are not employed or are not a company owner also have the possibility to set up residency here in the UAE. And last but not least, also newly, there's a path now to UAE citizenship. Just the visa overview, the options there are available now. The first one, still the same. If you invest in a company as a shareholder, putting in a certain amount of share capital, you're eligible for a company investor visa. Then down below, if you buy real estate here, also this gives you an option, depending on how much you invest in this real estate property, to gain UAE residency. On top, as it has been before, of course, if you work here for a local UAE company, being it the mainland company or one of the various free zone companies, you're eligible, of course, for a work and residency visa here in the UAE. Then down the next, as a symbol, they want to attract talents and scientists. So here, if you're specialized in your area and you fit all the criteria, also in such case, you might be eligible for a 10-year golden visa here in the UAE. On top then, newly, when I talk about all stages of life, very newly introduced has been now the Retiree Visa. Having said before, either you own a company or are employed, meaning that if people retire, stop being employed, under the old regime, you basically would be forced to move back to your home country or set up your own company. So now the UAE has put in place a Retiree Visa, which allows retirees, of course, with a certain investment or financial background to obtain the residency here in the UAE. And last but not least, on the right bottom, like many other countries, foremost in the Caribbean, the UAE has put in place a remote work visa possibility, where you can actually obtain the work visa here in the UAE while you still continue working for your abroad-based company. Here, just the Golden Visa teaser. I just took some headlines from some newspapers. You can see they're all dated basically from beginning of July till end of July. Here you can see how the government is reaching out to specialized people and talents. The first one, every licensed doctor here now in the UAE can apply for a golden visa now as of July this year. So if he was employed by a local hospital here before, he might get a visa 2 or 3 years. Now the doctor, because of being a specialist, can now apply for a golden visa. Then you see just recently, also July 11th, the UAE has promoted they will give out 100,000 golden visa for coders, because also here it's about innovation, it's about being at the forefront of IT. So they want to bring coders, which are basically maybe freelancers or whatever from outside the country into the UAE, offering 100,000 UAE golden visas for a 10-year residency. Then as the next point you see, it's the various sorts, sectors of life and business. Over 70 Pakistani businessmen have gotten the UAE Golden Visa. This has also just recently been published, end of July. So you also see here various nationalities, various areas of life. You might be eligible for UAE Golden Visa. Last but not least, when we talk about the retirees, okay, we also can start and go to the start of your career. You see golden visas have been handed out to UAE students which have exceptional results in their scores and in their exams. So here 2,000 UAE students have received their golden visa. Of course, this then with having dependent visas in place, such a student can also bring in his family, his close first degree family. So you see, this is just a bit the latest development, which is reflected now in the news. The UAE really intending to bring like specialists and talents into the country and giving them an opportunity also for long-term residency, not just the 2 or 3 year visa, which they received until now. So when we go into the various visa options, this is just a quick overview, so you have a bit of understanding what is in place right now. The first one being a shareholder or an employee of a UAE company. This again reflects the old, or basically the former, simpler visa regime, where you can see for a mainland company, you would get a 2-year visa, and for one of the free zone companies, you will get a 3-year visa. Of course, these would be renewable, but this is basically just like the leftovers from the old regime. Newly, you can see if you invest in UAE real estate, there are basically 2 options you have. A property value between 1 and 5 million would give you a renewable 3-year visa. And if you invest 5 and more million dirhams, then you would be eligible for one of the golden visas, meaning a 5-year property visa. A new option also to become UAE resident is when you do investments in the UAE. So beside your own company, you can go for a public investment, which I will elaborate a bit further later in the presentation. We talk about 10 million. Of course, this is considerably higher, but this then in return would give you a 10-year golden investor visa. Then you have an option to have 500,000 invested in a specific project. This again, Golden Visa for 5 years. Last but not least, if you invest with one of the accredited UAE business incubators, also then you would be eligible for a 5-year investor visa, also renewable. Then here a bit into the more particular visa options. If you are above 55 years old, you basically have 3 criteria how you can obtain the retiree visa. Either you show you have financial savings of 1 million dirham, you would be eligible for a 5-year visa. The same is applicable to a monthly income of 20,000 dirhams, which is a bit more than 5,000 US dollars, or you do a real estate investment visa of 2 million dirham plus. Here, just as a remark, you see as a retiree, you only need to put down 2 million dirhams in order to be eligible for a 5-year visa. When we go back to the real estate investor, if you do that just as a real estate investor, you need to put down 5 million dirhams in order to get the 5-year property visa. Then if you're a specialist, a qualified specialist or a talent, this can be an accredited scientist, it can be an inventor with patents or a creative individual. All those criteria, if you fit those criteria, will be eligible for a 10-year visa. And then you see at the bottom, more a temporary solution. As Urs said before, during COVID, you can either stay at home in your home country, maybe you even have quarantine and need to stay in your house or apartment. It might be a good option to come to the UAE, where it's relatively open. Of course, there's a mask mandate and other small restriction, but compared to what happened just until recently in Europe, it's a relatively free life. There's sunshine, there's beach. You had the opportunity to work for your company based abroad for 1 year. Also, again, this is renewable. So when we go a bit deeper, just quick, as that you have a bit an understanding on the different visa types. Here it's the real estate investor visa. Here, you know, you can buy off-plan, meaning like you can already purchase the property here while it's still being constructed. Nonetheless, in order to be able to apply for a real estate investor visa, you need to show the title deed, because the title deed in the end shows the amount you have invested. So in fact, you're only eligible for such a visa once the property has been finished and is fit for habitation, meaning you can move in. So that meaning it's only residential property and only as direct individual you can buy, because your name needs to be on the title deed. You see, the property cannot be mortgaged, so the full amount needs to be paid down to make you available for the related visa, being 3 or for the 5 years visa. Once you have obtained the visa, then you can apply for dependence visa for spouse and children. Again, as long as you maintain the property, as long as the title deed is there, the visa can be renewed. The public investor visa is also like clients approaching me what this exactly means. So basically you have 3 options. You deposit 10 million dirhams into an investment fund here in the UAE. You establish a company here in the UAE with a capital, share capital not less than 10 million, or you partner into an existing company setup structure also with not less than 10 million. You see the condition, of course, the amount invested must be your money. So you cannot just take up a loan and invest the loan. The investment must be retained for at least 3 years. And you need to show that you have a financial solvency for up to 10 million dirhams. Seeing at the bottom here, you can see once you have obtained that visa, you have the chance to have, again, dependent visa for spouse and children. And here, especially, you can also have a visa for 1 executive and 1 advisor. So this here, for this visa, is not just for dependent, but basically you can bring your commercial and business advisor under the same umbrella. The entrepreneur visa, this is like when you invest minimal capital of 500,000 into a project, or you have the approval of an accredited business incubator that you have invested in a related project. Here again, beside the dependent being spouse and children, you can also bring a partner and 3 executives under the same umbrella. The retiree visa, we have seen a lot of demand recently for this type of visa. It has been on a theoretical level been implemented in 2018, but then it only got traction basically with the start of COVID, so being end of 19, beginning of 2020. You see, you are eligible for a 5-year renewable visa. You must fulfill either invest in a property, 2 million dirham, cannot be mortgaged, as I said, because they need to see that you actually put down the 2 million from your own funds. You have financial savings of no less than 1 million, and you have an active monthly income of no less than 20,000 dirhams. Here, be aware that, of course, your status is being a retiree, so these 20,000 dirhams cannot come out of a salary anymore, because otherwise you would not qualify as a retiree. So these 20,000 would then be basically pension payments from wherever in the world you get, but not from salary, meaning that once you retire, you have different options to show that you're actually retired. You bring an end of service letter from your employer who actually states that you have been terminated for retiree purposes, or you bring a letter from your social security authorities back in the home country, which confirm that you actually have retired. So see, these are basically the 3 options you have in order to apply for a retirement visa for 5 years. Here again, here you can sponsor your spouse under this visa. The remote work visa, again, this is maybe a bit influenced by, or mostly influenced by, the COVID pandemic and the related restrictions. The visa itself is valid for 1 year, and as you can see, basically 2 different kind of people have a right to apply for such a visa. It's on one hand an employee of a company based abroad. Here you need to show that you have at least $5,000 minimum monthly salary. Of course, the governments want to make sure that you can support yourself while being here in the UAE. Or you can do the same and say, like, I work remotely as the business owner of my own company. Here again, you need to show that you have at least $5,000 monthly income, and you need to show the bank statements to prove in the end to the authorities that you can support yourself while being here working remotely for your company. The path to UAE citizenship, as you can see, it has only been implemented at the beginning of this year. Compared to other citizenship routes here, you need to be nominated by the government or a royal court official. So you cannot just make an investment in order to obtain the residency here. Here it's like upon nomination of the government. Initially, you would have to have handed back your other nationality. This has been lifted now. So newly, if you get nominated, you can keep your original or former passport as well. You can see the laws stipulate categories of foreigners who can be nominated. This can be inventors, doctors, specialists, investors, scientists, or intellectuals, or individuals with creative talent. That's how they call it here in the laws. When we look at this, the condition to be met as an investor, you need to own property, or if you have a company, you of course need to have a company here in the UAE. As a doctor, you need to be a specialist in a specific area, and you need to show a track record, and you need to be a member of a reputable organization. So not each and every doctor can be nominated, but you need to basically show outstanding track record in your field of expertise. For the scientists, the same. You need to have a track record, and you need to have a recommendation letter even from the scientific institution here in the UAE to show and basically confirm your outstanding contribution made. An inventor, you need to have local or like one or more patents which are approved here by the UAE Ministry of Economy and or any other international body. So here again, it's all about the track record, because in the end, they want to attract talents. They want to give their passport to outstanding people. And this is basically what you need to bring in your backpack. Intellectuals and other individuals with creative talents, you need to be a pioneer in your field. You need to have win an award. So I guess if you won an Oscar, you might be on the list. You might be able to be nominated. So this is a bit the background. Having said that, the path to citizenship here is very exclusive. You need to be nominated. So compared to other regions, other national programs, basically, where you can invest, this is and will for the time being not be the case here in the UAE. However, here, compared to other residency programs where you need to invest, here you can see you have a variety of options now, how you can become resident here in the UAE, despite the big investments to be made. So here, definitely an opening up. Just one closing topic on the residency. It's always important to keep in mind that the residency is a door opener, is a key that you can go to a certain country without any time limitation. Here again, to be straightforward, just because you obtain a UAE residency, of course, does not make you a UAE tax resident. Having said that, it's like what the speaker said before, in order then to also profit for tax reasons, for a tax residency, you actually would need to be required to actually move to the UAE. Because you know how it is, mostly for the low and non-tax jurisdiction, the pressure from the OECD and the international community on all the double tax agreements now, it's about like where the center of your life is. So even having a UAE residency, but if you're out of the country more than 180 days, then you still cannot profit fully from a UAE residency. Having said that, why considering the UAE? As said before, also by Urs in his introduction, it's a zero tax regime, again, beside the 5% VAT. There is an extensive network of tax treaties with over 80 countries, so there's certain stability in how to deal with cross-border tax matters. There is a legal stability and sustainability in place where the UAE is pretty much on the forefront with signing that many treaties with other countries. There is no exchange control restriction on possibility of repatriation of income and capital gains, so this can be moved out of the country without any restrictions. The UAE has two world-renowned recognized financial hubs, the DIFC, the Dubai International Finance Center here in Dubai, which has been a bit longer in place than the ADGM, which is the counterpart in Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi Global Market. The UAE has world-class infrastructures and facilities, as well as the connectivity. I cheat here a bit, I take the numbers pre-COVID from 2019, where you can see 106 airlines operating to almost 280 destinations worldwide. There's a high quality of life and a safe and secure family environment. It's always important, like here, when you come here as an employee, maybe not as an investor, you want to make sure when you bring your family that the kids have a good school, there's international curriculum, private schools, so it's not an issue even if you move back a few years down the road. There is low crime, is a high quality of life, meaning the Louvre from France, Paris has opened here in Abu Dhabi just recently. There are world-renowned museums here, there's art, culture is here. Keeping in mind that this country is only 50 years old, celebrating the 50th anniversary this year, it's quite remarkable what the government and the leadership has put in place here. Also, towards the last point, there's political stability and the liberal business environment. The region as such, not known as the most stable in the region. One topic here, the Abraham Accords, the UAE has signed the treaties with Israel to normalize economic and diplomatic treaties. Also, this all plays into the stability here for the region. So these were my closing remarks. If there are any questions, then I'm happy to answer them. It was about to give you a short overview on the latest developments, how you can obtain the residency here in the UAE. Of course, all the other changes just happened recently would be topic for other webinars. Urs, I hand back to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael, for the very interesting presentation. And it's really very interesting where we see many countries offering residency passports, and now Dubai, the UAE in general, offering all kind of different visa. Citizenship, of course, is very difficult. That is not, you just pay money and then you get it. That, of course, is a completely different league.